Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching a special edition of the Newstrack. The Modi government has put out Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0, the Diwali stimulus package. To what extent will today's announcements help the government get the economy back on track and ensure that the revival process is speeded up? And is this even the right approach? Or is there a need for more cash in the hands of the Aam Aadmi? We'll have three top voices joining us on the Newstrack. First and foremost, for a perspective from the government, we'll have Principal Economic Advisor Sanjeev Sanyal joining us from the Finance Ministry. Then I'll have the political heavyweight, Mr. P. Chidamabaram, former Finance Minister, one of India's most respected economic voices, coming in with the opposition's perspective on the government's announcements and the overall approach. We'll also ask him a few questions about Bihar and the Congress's poor strike rate there. Last but not least, for a perspective from India Inc., we'll have Uday Kotak, President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Kotak Mahindra Bank, to get a sense of how India Inc. views what the government is doing and isn't doing. Here's a quick look at our top 4%.
Modi government's big bonanza. Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0 stimulus. Green shoots emerge. But India hits recession. What will ventilate economy? Top economic minds coming up on Newstrack.
To talk about the Diwali stimulus package of the Modi government and Aatmanirbhar 3.0, we are joined on the broadcast now by the Principal Economic Advisor to the Finance Ministry, one of the government's top economic minds. Sanjeev Sanyal joins us at a time when the Indian economy has technically entered an official recession. 2 quarters of negative growth. We're now coming up with the Diwali stimulus package. What's your net reading, Mr. Sanyal, as we start this broadcast? Because you've got on the one side an official recession kicking in as per the technical definition of what constitutes a recession. On the other side, we see some nascent green shoots of economic recovery. How do you assess the Indian economy at this stage of us dealing with this pandemic and recession?
Well, I mean, the technicality of a recession was known. We have known that during the lockdown, particularly the quarter of April to June, things were in a complete lockdown. So obviously that had an impact on the economy. We had no choice about doing it for health reasons, but we did it knowing fully well that there would be a price to pay. The following quarter, which is the July to September quarter, we opened things up. So yes, it won't be as severe as the previous quarter. So I think you will see a number coming down, but it was still likely negative number in terms of a year-on-year GDP growth. So yes, technically a recession, but I think the interesting thing here is that as we have opened up step by step, we have seen those parts of the economy that have been opened up coming back quite strongly. So you have in August some shoots coming up, but then green shoots coming up, but then you have September and October numbers very definitely showing momentum, and I think even the very early numbers for November showing momentum. So I think whether it's, you know all the numbers, whether it's the Purchasing Managers Index, the electricity consumption, movement of freight trains, and so on, all the numbers suggest a significant recovery. Of course, this is not to suggest that there aren't sectors where there's still a lot of difficulty. Entertainment, travel, hospitality, those are sectors that are only now just about getting opened up. So those sectors still haven't really gotten the stride. But I would say that, given how tough things have been, we are looking quite good.
Now, this whole business of opening up the economy more and more carries with it the flip risk of the pandemic spreading faster. And we've seen this happen in Europe, we've seen it happen in the United States and in some parts of India, where doctors are saying the more you loosen things up, open up the economy, start going back to normal, the faster the virus spreads. So how are you in government dealing with this double-edged sword? You want the economy to bounce back, you want markets to open, you want people to go shopping, and yet at the same time, as that happens, people kind of become more careless about the pandemic and the COVID numbers start skyrocketing again. We're seeing that in Delhi, for example.
So you're absolutely right. We are not out of the woods yet. You mentioned US and Europe, and absolutely, the second wave in these places has been much, much worse than the first wave. In fact, conditions are much worse in Europe than they are in India, for example. So it is something to be concerned about. And, the Prime Minister took time out to go out and make this very point just a couple of weeks ago. So yes, we are opening things up. This is not because we do not see the risk. But on the other hand, we have to take the call, one, not just on the economy, but also recognizing that, there are hotspots. Delhi seems to be becoming one, and we need to be able to handle this in a localized way. Shutting down the country in a general sense is probably not something we would like to do if we can avoid it. So I would argue where we can take localized steps. Also remember our response to the health risk is also improved in the sense that, yes, while it is spreading, I would argue that death rates have continued to be quite low. So to give ourselves some credit as well, I do think that our medical fraternity have become a lot better as far as dealing with extreme cases than they were before. So both of that suggests that, the worst is well behind us. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods, you're right, but it does mean that the worst is behind us.
So in past interviews you've done with us, you've indicated, others in the government have indicated that you're keeping your powder dry for later when the economy starts opening up. Then there could be some kind of further fiscal stimulus and also a specific cash transfer. We saw during the Bihar elections, reportage seemed to suggest that there was a unavoidable amount of economic distress. Is that something you're still working on, a direct cash transfer, or do you believe this Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0 package that you've announced, that this is the route, credit guarantees, this is the route, rather than finding ways of directly transferring cash to those who need it at this moment?
You will remember that our approach throughout has been very different from what many other countries have done, or the certain kinds of sort of strategies that we were advised to take. We have been quite consistent that during a period of total lockdown or mostly lockdown, it was no point in providing trying to have an acceleration in demand. There's no point in pressing the accelerator when you've got your foot firmly on the brake. There's a point I made then, and I'm making it now. However, we have now taken our foot mostly off the brake. So there is a case now for pressing the accelerator. So that is precisely what we are doing, but we are doing it in a very specific way. So let me explain what we are trying to do here. The package announced today is very targeted. It is not a generic, let's go out there and spend money. No, we are very clear. We are providing an incentive to the private sector to go out there and hire again. In some cases, hire back those who they were forced to lay off, but also to hire afresh. And remember, the way we have set it up using the EPFO, we want them to come into the formal sector because that comes with other benefits as well. So there's a very specific targeting of jobs. Similarly, we are trying to encourage certain sectors using the PLI scheme to get investment going again. And this is, again, very targeted. We want investment into sectors where we can be part of the global supply chain and be globally competitive by creating a cluster. So very much targeted to get things going. But notice when we have timed it, and we keep saying timing is important, as some of the green shoots come back, as momentum comes back, this is when we want to push things and accelerate things. So this is something we will continue to do. One more commitment that we have, which is public investment in infrastructure, that also is being ramped up as we speak. So notice what we are doing together. We are committing to things that will last for a period of time. Because infrastructure or PLI scheme or this scheme on employment, they are meant to last for a period of time. You can't abandon an infrastructure project halfway through. So when we are saying that we are going to keep this going, we mean, therefore, we are prepared for the marathon and we will keep up this.
So let me press you further on that issue. From what I gather from your response, you're suggesting that a direct cash transfer scheme is not the favored approach of the government in your way of thinking at this moment, and isn't being pushed forward at this time. You may think about it later, but not at this moment.
Our approach with direct schemes of that kind have always been to think of it and not as a way to accelerate demand, but a way to provide good safety net. It works much better that way, and that is something we did right in the beginning. So at the time that we were not doing these investment type acceleration approach, we were doing that in terms of providing Jandan accounts money, providing food, which we have provided pretty much free for a very large proportion of the population, I think 800 million or thereabouts, up to November. So when we think of this direct transfer, we think of it predominantly as a cushion or a safety net. As far as acceleration and economic growth is concerned, that is mostly done through the route of getting investment going, infrastructure investment going, and so on. So they are two different things, not to be confused.
Now, one of the big pushes has been to incentivize production to the extent of 1.46 lakh crores and to pull manufacturing out of China. You've had an opportunity to present this case to global manufacturers. Net, how is it going? We've seen the odd success, but is this just going to be restricted to the odd success, or do you think it will generate a momentum which will lead to very substantive and tangible outcomes?
So we did initially do the PLI with, I think, 3 sectors. Obviously, we think that it succeeded. We have seen certain supply chains move to India, and we think we can consequently replicate it in other places. That is why we have widened it to these new, I think, 10 new sectors. So that is clearly how we are going about. But I would like to add here that it is not just about manufacturing. So if you have seen what the kinds of reforms we've done very recently, just last week, in fact, you would have seen we removed a large number of telecom-related restrictions on the BPO and IT-enabled services. So it is not just in the manufacturing sector. We want to ramp up our presence in global supply chains, even in the services sector. So this is a much more generic attempt to capture space in global supply chains, manufacturing or services.
You know, one of the big concerns which everybody has is around the vaccine. And you're involved in the piece that deals with the funding of the vaccine rollout. We've seen the likes of Adar Poonawala say the government will have to figure out where it will get up to 80,000 crore rupees from. We already know that government revenue and resources are stretched. We're also in the middle of an economic crisis, which we're trying to recover out of. How much money in the government's estimate will it take for a pan-India vaccine rollout? Where do you hope to find that money from, Mr. Sanyal?
Well, let me clarify. I'm not the expert on the health aspects of the vaccine or when it will come or how much it will cost. But I think if you will remember, the expenditure secretary made it adequately clear that we will make the resources where necessary, because clearly, remember, we have to, the economic cost of having this pandemic spread is so high that we would look at it as investment, so to speak. And we will put in whatever effort is needed to roll this vaccine out to as much of the population as necessary. But an important thing to remember that while we may want to vaccine the entire population, as far as breaking its spread is concerned and its sort of effective impact on the economy, as soon as we have got it to a fair amount of the population, I don't know what the scientific number would be, but in the big centers, the transmission of this virus would break. So it's, while we would like to cover the entire population, even if we cover a significant proportion of the population at high concentration in areas like Mumbai or Delhi, the spreading of it will break quite quickly. And I think, we don't have to get going, get everybody inoculated before the benefits come through.
I want to deal for a moment with the employment rate. Now, you saw in the Bihar campaign, for example, jobs, unemployment became a bigger issue than they ordinarily become in an election campaign. Net, the unemployment rate is coming down, but that's in comparison with at a time when we had a full lockdown. However, employment and jobs is still a big issue. Apart from the incentives that you've just given, what are you trying to do to ensure that the young who at this moment don't have jobs and think their prospects are bleak actually find some reason for hope that they will find the kind of employment that they seek?
Obviously, job creation is an important issue in India and abroad. I mean, this pandemic has been a huge shock for jobs. It has obviously blocked off all kinds of economic activities. So there are general steps that need to be taken, and then there are specific steps. The general steps that we have been taking is obviously liberalizing things wherever we can. For example, we have made labor laws a lot more flexible than they used to be. We have, of course, introduced at the same time safeguards on safety and working conditions and so on. But the framework of flexibility definitely has been introduced. Same thing has been sectorally we have done, for example, opening up the agriculture sector. So there are these general kinds of things that have been done. Then there are more specific things that are also being done. I mentioned yesterday, I mentioned that last week, that we have opened up the IT-enabled services dramatically. This is important because we tend to think of our place in the IT industry, for example, as basically a back office operation. But in fact, we can be very much a front office operation. I mean, after all, I am doing this interview with you online. We've all around the world gotten used to doing things in a video conference on various platforms, Skype, Zoom, whatever you like. And so you can't tell me that this is not going to change the way we do business in every field. And then suddenly it allows us to compete in all kinds of new areas, which we couldn't do just 6 months ago. So I think this is a major reform we did last week in terms of opening up the IT BPO sector and getting rid of all the 20th century regulations that we had inherited. We are now doing that in other areas as well. So you can clearly see providing these incentives today in terms of formalization, again, an effort in that direction. So we are building step by step, building up, ramping up the economy. And of course, it's all about jobs ultimately.
We'd leave it there. For the time being, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, for joining us, thank you very much. The government doing what it thinks is the best that can be done. We've heard from the government first up, their perspective on Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0 and what's being done to try and tackle the jobs crisis. Sanjeev Sanyal, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The Modi government has rolled out what's being called Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0, the big Diwali stimulus package, at a time when the Indian economy entered a technical recession for the first time since quarterly GDP numbers have been calculated by the RBI. Joining us now, Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament of the Congress, former Finance and Home Minister, and one of the country's leading economic voices, Mr. P. Chidamabaram. Mrs. Chidamabaram, welcome to the Newstrack. The Finance Minister, very emphatic in the press conference she did this afternoon to say that green shoots of recovery are strongly visible, that India is bouncing back from this economic hit. What's your view, sitting in the opposition, about the manner in which the Indian economy seems to be attempting to come out of this recession?
I've heard these words, green shoots are visible, for the last almost 6 months. They said it in the first quarter of this year. They said it in July. They said it in August. They said it in September. Just go back and look at the archives and newspapers and your own shows. How can you say that green shoots are visible when the first quarter returned a negative economic growth of 23.9%, and the second quarter will return a negative economic growth of 8.6%. And believe me, third quarter also will record negative economic growth. 1.5 months of the third quarter are over, and there are no signs that we are getting into positive territory. I don't see green shoots. Either I'm blind or colorblind, but I don't see green shoots yet.
Sir, Gst collections have again bounced beyond 1 lakh crore rupees. Unemployment rate, according to CMI, is coming down. The purchasing managers index is at a decadal high. So there are some shoots available. The government's belief at this time is we need to instill confidence in the economy amongst consumers, amongst industry, because only with that confidence will we truly re-emerge.
They are still addressing the supply side. They have failed to address the demand side. The purchasing managers index is an index. It's not real numbers of the economy. It's an index. I saw likewise the finance minister boast about the Sensex. Now, the Sensex is a number. Nifty is a number. Of course, it benefits those who invest in the stock market, but less than 1% invest in the stock market. We are looking for real numbers. The only real number which is positive is agriculture, because our farmers are producing. Coronavirus or no coronavirus, a farmer has to go to the field and plow and sow and spray fertilizers and pesticides and weed and then harvest. But except agriculture, I don't see any positive growth in any sector. Don't go by these monthly numbers. Auto sales are up in a month. But that doesn't mean a long-term trend on auto sales is being established. So let's look for numbers over a period of time. GST will go up in 1 month and go down in another month. Does it establish a trend? So look at real numbers. Don't look at these artificial indicators.
You're saying the government's only tackling the supply side of the problem. We've spoken to the top economic voices in the government. They are saying that their approach is different from what you and many global economists have advocated, that there must be direct cash transfers. Even in the announcements that have been made today with EPFO, they're trying to incentivize formal job creation. This government's economic philosophy seems to suggest they don't believe that beyond a point you put cash into the hands of the last man. They want to encourage industry to create jobs because they believe that is better use of the money, more bang for the buck, because that's self-sustaining, rather than give them money. Once it's over, you're back to square one.
I see the difference in approach, but we think it's wrong. Why does America, Britain, Germany, Japan, France, why do all these countries put money in the hands of people? The world's richest country, the United States, puts money in the hands of every person every month. Now, we can always find an economist who will support the government's position. But I can name a dozen economists who have said transfers are the best way to revive demand. From Dr. Raghuram Rajan to Dr. Jahangir Aziz, I can name a dozen economists, including the Nobel laureate, who have said that transfer of cash is the surest way to revive the economy. I agree. This is a different point of view. But the government doesn't listen to us. We can only speak up. We can only write. We can only demand that this be done. But if the government is deaf to our pleas, deaf to the advice of world-renowned economists, what can I do?
The government can argue that their approach also had economic validation. Despite the recession, despite migration, despite the pandemic, despite the lockdown, it's the National Democratic Alliance that won a hard-fought election in Bihar. All these factors together, under normal circumstances, backed with 15 years of anti-incumbency, would have been a knockout blow for any government. Despite everything, they still won, Mr. Chidamabaram.
If you think that the Bihar vote is a validation of the government's economic policy, I think you're wrong. The Bihar is the poorest state in India. The Prime Minister has been in office since 2014. Mr. Nitish Kumar has been in office since 2005. And yet Bihar is the poorest state. The last persons who should speak about the economy of Bihar are Mr. Modi and Mr. Kumar. Now look at the vote in Bihar. I agree, the Congress party's performance disappointed me. And I'm sure the CWC will take note of that. But look at the popular vote. 37.26% for the NDA and 37.23% for the Mahagathbandhan. What is the difference? 0.03. Can you imagine what 0.03 is? It's a few thousand votes. Because we have a winner past the post system, that translates into 125 seats and 110 seats. So don't look at the Bihar verdict as a resounding verdict for the NDA. And certainly it's not a validation of the economic performance of this government.
So what you're saying is correct, yes and no, because in the end, jo jeeta wahi Sikandar, whether it's by a few thousand up or a few thousand down, that's the way elections are decided, and it happened in the United States as well. Donald Trump fought hard, but in the end, Joe Biden was a little in front. If they've been able to, despite all of what you mentioned in terms of economic recession, dispossession, people not having jobs, then the government should have been blown out of office, which didn't happen. It isn't a resounding victory, but it's a victory nonetheless.
I agree. Who takes away from their victory? It is a tribute to their economic management. It's not a tribute to their economic management. It is a tribute to their election management. It's perhaps also a tribute to the tactical steps they took in different constituencies. It's a tribute to the organizational strength of the RSS and the BJP. And I'm not taking away a bit from the election victory of the NDA. They won an election and therefore they're entitled to form the government, and it's a perfectly legitimate government. I'm only disagreeing with you that it is a validation of the economic policies of the government. That I don't think so.
Sure, but what does it reflect about the opposition? Despite all these problems, and you've been in electoral office, you realize how anti-incumbency builds up. If it is the government and the NDA and the BJP that comes to power, the connect of the Prime Minister with the people, to be able to get them to believe him even now, despite everything that you believe has happened and how people should be reacting to it, ultimately it's the Prime Minister who, through his sheer connect with the voters of Bihar, was able to carry the NDA through. Sitting in opposition, what do you make of that, Mr. Chidamabaram?
I don't disagree with you. In fact, I should ask you the question. What did your exit poll say? Your exit poll, India Today's exit poll. For I don't disagree with you. It is certainly endorsement of the fact that the NDA managed the election much better. The NDA carried its narrative much better. Mr. Tejashwi Yadav, a young leader, was pitted against a formidable Mr. Narendra Modi, Mr. Nitish Kumar, Mr. Sushil Kumar Modi, and other tall leaders of the BJP. But why don't you also pay compliment to Mr. Tejashwi Yadav's tireless election campaign, which brought him nearly to the door of victory. He still is the single largest party in Bihar. He edged out the BJP. His resources were a fraction of the BJP's resources. He was a lone campaigner for the Mahagathbandhan, especially the RJD, whereas the BJP had a whole range of campaigners. Therefore, while you endorse and compliment the Prime Minister, please endorse and compliment Mr. Tejashwi Yadav also.
Oh, most certainly. Tejashwi ran a very spirited campaign, received a huge response. But what does that suggest, sir, about the inability of the Congress, even after being out of office for since 2014, to build some kind of a base? You had the fewest rallies from your top leadership. Many of your top leaders didn't go at all. Amongst the lowest strike rates, couldn't even hold on to the number of seats you had the last time. And many in the RJD are saying, including some in the Congress, that if the Gathbandhan isn't in power, it's because of the inability of the Congress to get its act in order.
I have told you that I'm disappointed. Sitting in Chennai, and not part of the election campaign in Bihar, I can't say more than that. All I can say is the CWC will certainly review the performance and draw the lessons and take corrective action. Hope so.
Since you are in Chennai, can I ask you about the impact this could have on the Tamil Nadu elections? We're already seeing the likes of Prashant Kishore, who's advising Mr. Stalin in the DMK, suggest that it is better to go it alone than to go in partnership with the Congress, that the Congress in the last elections was the weak link. We've already seen what happened in Uttar Pradesh and now recently in Bihar. Therefore, keep the Congress out. So instead of the allies wanting to be with the Congress, are you concerned that maybe the DMK will decide they don't want the Congress in the assembly elections?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Mr. Stalin, the DMK know the value that the Congress in Tamil Nadu brings to the DMK alliance. In 2000, the previous election was 2016. In the one before that, the DMK did not take the Congress into an alliance. The 2019 Parliament, 2014 Parliament election. And both the DMK and the Congress lost all the seats. Therefore, I think the DMK knows the value which the Congress in Tamil Nadu, and I'm only speaking about Tamil Nadu, brings to the alliance. And there are also examples of Congress winning in Rajasthan, winning in Chhattisgarh, winning in Jharkhand in alliance with the JMM, winning in Madhya Pradesh until the government was stolen by the BJP, winning in Karnataka until the government was stolen by the BJP. Therefore, if you put one Bihar on one of the sides of the scale, I can give 4 or 5 examples to put on the other side. Not that I'm trying to gloss over what happened in Bihar. As I said, I can only say that. Sitting in Chennai, I can only say we are disappointed.
What are the larger national political consequences of the verdict and the current economic situation? You've got from the opposition's perspective, what you'd consider a disconnect. You think economic distress is building up, the government's still growing strong despite all the problems that you cited. In the end, they managed to go through and win the election. What are the larger national political consequences of this, sir?
Unquestionably, the economy weighs on the minds of the people. In fact, it weighed on the minds of the voters of Bihar too. But it was counterbalanced by some other factors: election management, resources, campaign style, campaign tactics. But you will see in the elections of next year, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Bengal, Assam, Puducherry, you will find that the economy is the biggest talking point. In fact, in Tamil Nadu, we will talk about the economy. In Kerala, they will talk about the economy, apart from state-specific issues. If you think that people have forgotten and forgiven the dire straits in which the economy finds itself, you're wrong. Talk to young people, talk to women. Please understand, the labor force is shrinking and the unemployment rate is rising. Jobs which were lost have not come back. New jobs have not been created. The bottom half, or certainly the bottom 1/3 of the population, is in utter poverty. The poverty number has increased. Inequality has increased. Infant mortality has increased, all in the last 2-3 years. And these are statistics which came out today about infant mortality increasing and inequality increasing. So don't think that the economy can be wished away by one Bihar result.
But would you agree that the worst is now behind the country and it can't get worse than what we've been through? We can argue about the speed of recovery and the trajectory and the policy maneuvers, but the way forward will involve an upward trajectory.
It is a no-brainer. if the economy has sunk to minus 23.9% in one quarter, it can only go up. It can't go further down than minus 23.9. If people produce wheat and paddy and sugarcane, and people produce bicycles and two-wheelers and cars, if people produce cloth and footwear, the economy will only go up. The question is, what is the government doing to hasten the revival? What is government doing to quicken the revival? Are they taking the right steps? If the government did nothing also, Rahul, if the government did nothing, the economy will still revive. Question is when and how quickly.
At this moment, what would you like to see the government push through to speed up the recovery in the economy, Mr. Chidamabaram? What would be your key policy recommendation?
I listed a number of steps in a number of articles in the past. Let me list only 4 today. Number 1, farmers are producing. I pay tribute to the farmers. They must be paid fair and remunerative prices. Only a fraction of India's farmers get the MSP. And even that is in jeopardy after the 2 farm bills have been passed. Government must find a way in which more and more farmers in every harvest, Rabi, Kharif, more and more farmers get the MSP, more and more farmers get fair and remunerative prices. Number 2, the government must put money in the hands of the very poor people. My constituency is a rural constituency. I know the kind of poverty they are. Tamil Nadu is not such a poor state as Bihar, but even in Tamil Nadu, the bottom 25% or 20% or 33% is in very dire poverty. You'll have to put money in their hands, which is why we plead for cash transfer. Number 3, the government must try to bring back jobs. This requires a sectoral approach. What is good for tourism and hospitality may not be good for manufacturing automobiles. What is good for software may not be good for MSMEs. You'll have to have a sectoral approach to bring back jobs, reopen or revive closed businesses. Lakhs of MSMEs have closed down. You have to bring back the jobs and then incentivize those who are already back in production to increase the number of jobs. And finally, the government must ensure that capital expenditure is not cut. Please ask the government tomorrow. They budgeted a capital expenditure. At the end of this year, what will be the capital expenditure? States are going to cut 2.7 lakh crore rupees to the budgeted capital expenditure. When they presented the budget in February, March, they had planned a capital expenditure out of which they're going to cut 2.7 lakh crore, which is about 50%. So unless capital expenditure of the center and states goes back to near the budgeted amount, how can there be a revival of growth? These are the 4 steps that I would urge the government to immediately adopt.
Well, you've presented an alternate point of view on what you think the government ought to be doing at this time, Mr. Chidamabaram. You've also accepted the shortcomings in the verdict in Bihar, but you're hopeful that the DMK will stay on board with the Congress in that big battle in Tamil Nadu. We wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Chidamabaram. We've heard from government, we've heard from the opposition. Now for a perspective of how India Inc. views the India revival story. We're joined on the Newstrack by one of corporate India's most respected voices, President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Managing Director and Chief Executive of the Kotak Mahindra Bank, Mr. Uday Kotak. Mr. Kotak, welcome. Happy Diwali. How happy a Diwali is this turning out to be from your perspective? Because, you know, that's really a barometer of how the economy is faring. In the way that things are at this moment, how happy a Diwali is this for you?
I think it's got much better than what we would have envisaged a few months ago. And particularly September, October and parts of November are giving us enthusiasm and confidence that this could be more sustainable and does not look like just a flash in the pan. That's how we feel today. And on the eve of Diwali, I just wanted to wish you and all your viewers a very happy Diwali, and with a sense of hope and cautious optimism.
So we just heard from Mr. Chidamabaram, and he made the point that don't look at numbers for example, automobiles, two-wheelers or four-wheelers or GST numbers around the festive season. His concern is that the green shoots that India Inc. and the government are talking about are not sustainable, that this is a one-off, it's a flash in the pan. Is that an apprehension you have, or do you believe these shoots have really gone deep and there's a strong recovery tree that's coming up?
I think there is much greater confidence that this looks more sustainable. And of course, with an important point that we keep COVID under check, and the position on COVID, particularly over the last 30 to 40 days, is extremely positive. And I do hope that post the festival season, the good news on the health and the science continues and does not take us back. So subject to that, I think this recovery could be more sustainable. But it's an important point, and I think it's a point which is important for all citizens of India, that we must not drop our alert on COVID and keep our antenna high and take protective measures all the way.
The other concern the opposition has is about capital expenditure, that long-term recovery can happen only if the government goes out and spends in the creation of infrastructure. And Mr. Chidambaram's assertion was that we've seen a huge cut in the capital expenditure budget because revenue has been hard hit, therefore the government's cutting down on capital expenditure. In the way that you're looking at the numbers and all the metrics that you're tracking, is that an apprehension you have as well, Mr. Kotak?
Again, I will answer it in two parts. First, there have been a series of supply side measures which have been taken. And if you notice, the demand side measures by the government have been more controlled and measured. Therefore, I think structural changes towards making sure that the supply side keeps on pushing is important, because what we do not want is demand created without enough supply happening. Having said that, I think this is a game about confidence. It's about getting our animal spirits back to be out there to make new investment plans. And if this sustains itself for the next few months, say up to December or early January, I am pretty clear that many businesses, entrepreneurs, and even global foreign direct investment and private equity investors will be thinking about putting medium-term money into investments. But this is a very crucial period between November and January.
Let's spend a minute on the demand-supply quandary, because on the one side you've got the government which believes that the money that's being given in the Aatmanirbhar Bharat 3.0 package and even everything that's been done before has been largely on the supply side, that's how you create sustainable employment. The opposition, including some of the world's top economists, including Nobel laureates, believe that India isn't going down the right path, that everything that's coming out of data from rural India suggests that there is massive economic distress. When I spoke to you last, I remember, you mentioned the need for greater fiscal stimulus, more cash in the hands of the last man. How do you view the government's approach vis-a-vis what you believe is required at this time?
So I think between various packages, this is an additional package. And one of the things which I liked about this package was also support to employment. It is a very important step. Maybe it started with salaries at 15,000 rupees and lower, which is really the bottom of the pyramid where the pain is the most. And the government is effectively giving 24% between employees' contribution and employers' contribution for smaller units. And finally, giving money directly for creation of jobs is a very important step. And I would actually believe that we can do more in this to create direct employment in the hands of enterprise as well as people in the job market.
I didn't get a direct answer, Mr. Kotak, so I'll ask again. Last time we spoke, you had mentioned and highlighted the need for greater fiscal stimulus and more money to be given to the last man. Do you believe that's something the government still needs to do?
See, if you look at the total amount which has been done till date, and I'm keeping aside the RBI package separately, we have totally, in terms of the different stimulus measures, some of them are in terms of credit guarantees, but which finally creates still money because banks lend. The total amount which has been created till now is about 17 odd lakh crores through the fiscal route. And at 17 odd lakh crores, it is incremental spend, which is 9% of our GDP. This is over and above our normal deficit financing which is happening. So I think we are now getting close to a level where I would say that we should not go too far forward. And this is additional stimulus. Just the measures today are another 1.3% of GDP in terms of stimulus 3.0. Therefore, a series of measures measured in totality have now got us to a point where it is in totality reasonably sizable.
You know, you said that it's all about spirits and your level of confidence, especially of industrialists and manufacturers, about whether they believe the trajectory is upwards or are they concerned that we're still on a slipping slope. As President CII, you speak to more industrialists and more titans of Indian industry than anyone else. What's your current gauge of the confidence thermometer of India Inc.?
No, I think it's certainly moving up as we move month by month. And I would say November is better than October in terms of these spirits, especially on a pre-Diwali position. Therefore, in a year like this, you do not measure it just in terms of normal parameters. You measure progress month on month, and every month is a different month. And what we are seeing is month by month, there is improvement, and business confidence is building, which is why I believe in order to ensure that this is not just pent-up demand, but more sustainable, the steps which we need to take are constantly additive. And the approach which the government has taken is step by step, giving a package at reasonable intervals. If we can hold this confidence and this gradient upwards between now and January, I think that will be a very big boost for sustainability.
No, but how do you deal with the fact that you're forming an opinion based on what we've seen in the key festive months, when there's huge pent-up demand because of the lockdown, because of COVID, people staying in, working from home. So you've got a huge pent-up demand, some of which is coming out. How do we establish at this point, without having to wait till January, whether the growth is deep enough to sustain, Mr. Kotak?
Rahul, remember one thing. Statistics are always challenging in these turbulent times. But go back to April and May and start tracking data from June, July, August, September, October, November. In India, festivals come and festivals go. So over this period of 5 or 6 months, every month's data has got better than the previous month. So there is a trend there. Now we may say that is some amount of pent-up demand, which we will find out as we get into December. And therefore, the government's package announced today is not something which is going to be giving results in terms of cash in the Diwali season. The government's plan is to ensure that this enables sustainability of demand beyond the festival season. And therefore, I would strongly believe that the combined fiscal plus monetary stimulus, and it is here that I commend RBI and RBI's Monetary Policy Committee, which in the October month said, we are keeping interest rates low, not just for now, but we are giving guidance well into 21-22 that interest rates will remain low through this period and we will be accommodative in our policy. Therefore, it has given comfort that there is both on the ground army moving and there is air cover in terms of lower interest rates for people to be taking calls on consumption as well. And I can see it in our own case in the, say for example, in the home loan market. People are going out and buying homes. Suddenly home has become the center of universe for every human being. And people are going ahead spending. Home loan rates are at a record level below 7%. I cannot think about any other time when rates have been so low. If you combine low interest rates and a steady progressive move towards adding fiscal stimulus in step-by-step packages, including Aatmanirbhar 3, the combined impact of monetary and fisc working together brings us a very good chance of this getting more sustainable over the next few months.
There's a huge concern in several quarters about the possibility of bad debt piling up with all these credit guarantees that we are just kicking the can down the road, and at some point in time in the future we could be staring at an even greater debt crisis than we had when we were hit by this pandemic.
You know, Rahul, this is the point I would like to address head on. COVID is an event once in 100 years. At that point of time, we have to take a view which has to be fundamentally based on hope for humanity. hope in human enterprise, hope that things which are going to be down in the COVID era must get a chance beyond the COVID era. And therefore, there are many sectors which have been disproportionately hit by COVID. And it is here that the finance minister has today added in the ECLGS program specifically for stressed sectors. We must give chance for people to survive, because once we hopefully get past the COVID syndrome, these sectors will likely come back. But if we say we want to kill those sectors at this point of time, I do not think that is the right approach. And if you just look at a few days ago when the Pfizer vaccine news was announced, you saw markets and airline stocks go up 30% in a day. For 6 months from now, if we have a vaccine and things go better, we would regret for having killed many companies and sectors because we did not give them a chance. It is our duty as a country and our duty as people, both at the political level and at the economic level, to give businesses a chance to survive, because finally that is where jobs will happen.
What's your view on the current stock market valuation? We're at an all-time high on the Bombay Stock Exchange, just around the time it's been announced that we're in our first recession since the RBI started putting out quarterly GDP numbers. Those who are not in the market on the outside say they've gone crazy, that there is no connect between the real economy and the stock markets. So how do you view the current level of valuation of the Bombay Stock Exchange and the NSE?
Rahul, 2 points. First, valuation of an asset depends on the discount rate or the interest rate which you calculate for the long term. The fact that there is huge amount of liquidity both globally and domestically, combined with extremely low interest rates, brings down the hurdle discount rate at which you value assets. Therefore, asset value goes up if your hurdle discount rate goes down. And people believe that some of the drop in the discount rates is more sustainable. Therefore, every financial or other asset value increases with the lower interest rate or earnings capitalization rate, as we call in economics. Therefore, the asset value adjusts to the lower discount rate. So that's point number one. And point number two, which is again extremely important, is the organized sector is reflected in the capital markets. The organized sector has been able to get much more efficient and productive in general in the COVID era, and has also been able to reduce some of its costs. Therefore, the markets are looking at a segment of the economy which is better off, which is the organized sector and listed companies. However, some of that pain, which is reduction of cost by organized sector, would have hurt the economy in the unorganized sector. And that part of this economy, which is unorganized, is not reflected in the capital markets, and it sits outside the capital markets, which is where the pain may be more than in the market space. And therefore, as an economy and as a business, and I can talk in my capacity as a banker because we deal across both organized and unorganized sectors, we need to give a greater support to the unorganized part of the economy, which has not benefited the way the organized sector has been able to restructure itself in the post-COVID era. Therefore, back to two important points in the context of markets: lower interest rates and discount rate make asset values move up. Number two, organized sector and listed companies have been able to adjust to the new reality much faster and better than the rest of the economy. And therefore the markets are reflecting that.
What more would you like to see the government do? You're saying the next 2 months are crucial. Over these 2 months, what more policy announcements would you like to see to ensure that the green shoots that you're talking about take deep roots and become sustainable?
You know, Rahul, I've learned one thing in the COVID era in terms of running our business. Every day is a new day, and don't carry the baggage of yesterday. Think about a car you are in, drive looking into the windshield, not into the rear view mirror. And my advice to government as well is that every day take the facts on their merits, and we must be in a position to respond quickly to the changing times. And if we show that alacrity, and I think government has demonstrated enough signals that it is committed to reform and to make sure that India takes advantage of this opportunity, I think we will be in a much better position. Don't go with fixated ideas. Every day changes things. And if there's one thing COVID has told us, is that 2020 is a year where you will remember for the rest of our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Of that, there can be no doubt. Always interesting to hear your very refreshing ideas and thoughts. Mr. Uday Kotak, thank you so much for your time. We wish you a very, very happy Diwali. And the happier the Diwali, the faster the bounce back and the stronger the revival. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rahul, and wish you all a happy Diwali and New Year. Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye. This is where I wrap up this power-packed, heavy-duty edition of the Newstrack. I hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you for your time and your trust. I was wishing all of you a very, very happy Diwali.